sometimes you throw out something and you think it's going to be great and it doesn't work. And sometimes you think you made something really great and nobody watches it. We made this pressure washing video back in September and I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden it has like 10,000 views. And you can spend like all this time and energy into costumes and lines and everything, and then it's the pressure washing video that goes.
Isn't that the thing?
It is.
It's the thing, man. Hey, I'm Armando Leduc, producer, film actor, and owner of Leduc Entertainment. I've chosen a life off the beaten path and wanted to find others that are doing the same. Spaghetti on the Wall is a show based on all of the years that I've thrown spaghetti on the wall and nurtured what stuck. We will share fun stories, ideas, tips, tricks, and more. Welcome to Spaghetti on the Wall. What up, what up, what up? It is another episode of Spaghetti on the Wall, brought to you by San Antonio, actually. Or San Antone. I know people don't call it that, but I want to call
San
it
Antone.
Right? It sounds cool.
I want to call it San Antone, but I've been told that that's not. The SA, they've called it the SA, or San Antonio, but who calls it San Antone? Somebody did.
Cowboys.
Cowboys?
Yeah. Like on Westerns and stuff.
You got to kind of have that draw in your
The
voice.
San Antone.
There you go.
Right on. Amy Feller, what's up?
How are you?
How are
The
you?
roofer chick.
Good. Good.
The
to hear.
roofer chick. Is it like Amy Feller, roofer chick? Like
Better
James
known
Bond?
to you as the roofer chick.
Is that what you do?
A lot.
Is that how you
Yeah.
introduce? Yeah, well, I mean,
Also known to you. Yeah.
also known to you as the roofer chick. Oh, I know that.
Right.
Do they do that?
Yeah.
But they probably already know
Are
you.
you the roofer chick?
Oh,
Yeah.
they'll ask
Yeah.
you if you're the roofer chick.
Yes.
Right on. That's awesome. We'll get in that. And Jerry Salceda,
What's up, y'all?
co-hosting today over here in San Antonio. We've been having a good time today. And so really happy that you're here because we want to know about the roofing business and, sort of the marketing strategy of someone that has, I mean, is there anybody here in this town that like, well, not San Antonio, but New Braunfels.
Right.
Anybody that in
Another-
that town that like is known as much as you in the roofing world?
Probably not. There's probably 10 to 15 roofers in New Braunfels. I get out there quite a bit. There's another, so I'm a GAF Master Elite contractor, and there's another one in New Braunfels. And we're similar, like on how we set up our business
Right.
in that way. But I do a lot of marketing, and not just the standard like billboard and the newspaper, but really trying to get out there with social media and community stuff. And
So talk to me about the different marketing outlets that you are involved with.
think of all of them. I do the billboard. That's a roofer thing. We all have to have a billboard for some reason. I don't know
How
why,
many
but,
do you have?
Right now, I have two.
Two.
I've had three. I think I'm going to take one down and roll some of that money into social media. So I do quite a bit of social media, being YouTube. TikTok's kind of a new thing
Sure.
for us. Facebook, of course, Instagram.
How much is a
all that.
billboard out here?
I pay $1,400 a month for my one on I-35, and so that's a pretty major corridor.
And it's not a digital. It's
No, it's not. It's just simple wrap. It has lights
Got it.
on it at night. And I pay $350 a month for one out in Canyon Lake, which is a small area outside of our town. So
$350 a month?
Pretty good deal.
That's pretty
But
awesome. How many
it's-
people are driving by it though? Not
I don't know the studies, not as many as there are on I-35, of course.
sure.
I think
But-
especially after COVID too, like billboard, advertisements kind of really dipped quite a bit. So I mean,
Yeah, the thing about Canyon Lake for us is that that's a hail market, and they get hit. But something about the lake must attract weather, and so they get hit quite a bit. And so it's a good market for us, even though it's a super small town with lower traffic.
So marketing is huge for you.
It is huge for me because the thing is, like, nobody thinks that they need a roofer, right? Like, you talk to the normal person, they're like, oh, that's great, but I don't need a roof, because nobody needs one until they need one.
Sure.
And then you need to be top of mind
Yeah.
because they're going to go to the first person they think of more than likely.
How much of your revenue do you say goes into marketing?
6%-ish.
6%.
Yep. And there's other companies that spend a lot more. There's other companies that spend a lot less.
I gotcha. And can you attribute your marketing spend to the growth of your business?
Somewhat, of course. I think the growth of my business, a lot of that is word of mouth. And just being known, and that's marketing, right? Branding, marketing. Jerry and I talk about that quite a bit, what the difference is.
Right.
I think a lot of it's branding and people just being familiar with who you are.
So what's the difference between branding and marketing, or is it the same?
To me, it's not the same. To me, marketing is like going out there and trying to get an immediate customer. So running coupons, running ads, that kind of thing.
Would that be sales or marketing?
Marketing.
Or would it be marketing? Yeah, I guess so.
I guess my brain hasn't gotten to the detail. To me, sales.
I don't know.
Sales is the actual person going out and trying to make the sale.
Gotcha.
My person going to your house
And the follow-ups that
and doing all of that.
Gotcha. So everything to get them to the door is marketing. Everything after that is sales.
To me.
Yeah, no.
I don't know if that's technically.
I don't know if it's technically correct or whatever.
And branding is just like having your name out there all over the place, and community involvement and.
Talk to me about that.
Community involvement. I do quite a bit of it. That's one of the main things that I do. It's a pretty inexpensive way to get your name out there. So I belong to Rotary International. Is probably my favorite thing, which is a service club. And we basically we're a nonprofit that raises money for other nonprofits. And I'm not there to get business necessarily, but you make all the contacts and everything.
Sure.
I'm also Chamber of Commerce in New Braunfels, and I'm a blue coat, which means I'm an ambassador for the chamber and try and get other people to join. And then so that puts me at all the ribbon cuttings, and like tonight there's a mixer, which is why I'm dressed like this. And you just get to meet people so that people know who you are, and you get to know who they are, vice versa, right?
As far as other outreach, it's just sort of networking events, or is there like things that you guys sponsor?
We do some sponsoring. That's a pretty expensive way to make your way.
Right.
I used to do a lot more than I do now. I'm trying to be more choosy. But I'm on the board for Habitat for Humanity. And so I usually sponsor that event. One of my favorite charities is called Pink Warrior Advocates. And they help women that have been diagnosed with breast cancer. So I usually sponsor that event. I try and be choosy. Rotary, we have a craft beer festival. So I usually sponsor that. And I guess pick my 4 things a year and go with it.
With the 6% in marketing, is that every month? Based on your revenue? So like if the revenue is up, you're spending more.
It's pretty consistent because a lot of it I'm in contracts, like the billboard is a contract and it's the same amount every month.
Gotcha.
And I'm in the newspaper and that's the same amount every month. I do peak a little bit when our peak season goes, about 2 months before it goes. I try and up it a little bit so that when the storm comes, I'm top of mind.
Sure.
So there's a publication in our area called Community Impact. And I know that's in a lot of areas. I don't know if that's a Texas thing or a U.S. thing, but so I'll ramp up my marketing on that. I might increase my social media spend. Like most of what I do is organic, but I'll boost some stuff at that time of year or if there is a storm. So I guess a little bit I'll ride my waves, but for the most part, it's pretty consistent month to month. Also, a lot of my marketing money has gone to rebrand or wrapping trucks. And
how much does that cost?
You can do a full wrap or like a half a wrap. So I try and buy a truck that is already the color that matches my marketing scheme so I can do a half wrap, and then it's about $2,000 a truck. And I rebranded from Feller Roofing to Roofer Chicks in 2020, and I have 11 trucks, so I had to rewrap all of those. So it's a big chunk.
Did you get a discount at least?
Well, my manufacturer supported me in that effort.
Oh, okay, cool.
They don't like me to talk about how much, but they helped me with that, which
well,
is very
good.
nice of them. Yes.
Your manufacturers for like the roofing tiles and things like that?
Yes, so I'm the GAF Master Elite Contractor.
Gotcha.
So I sell a lot of GAF. I also sell quite a bit of Tamco. Those are our 2 main brands.
Okay, that's what you meant. I was going to ask you what GAF meant, and then we passed it, and I was like, oh, well, all right.
Right.
So GAF is a brand?
Yes, and it was GAF. It's like it started as a film company way back when, so that's what the F is. But, and then they bought out Elk. You ever hear about Elk in the 80s? Was a big roofing company. So
that's cool.
Anyway, so.
So you have partnerships. Who are your referral partners?
I do a lot with property management companies, realtors. Those are probably my big 2.
Okay, you can ask questions too, man.
The thing about a roof is for people, it's like a one-time purchase, hopefully once in their lifetime. But depending on how big of a hail zone you live in, you might do it 2 or 3 times. But
So is
it's
hail
not-
big here?
It can be, yes. In 2016 in San Antonio, it was softball size, and it knocked holes through the roof. It was bad. Anything golf ball size or bigger damages a roof. And
Softball size, I'm sure, goes through.
right,
Oh
that
my
was a major
God.
storm. Dallas gets hit all the time, but
Really?
we get hit every 3 years, and it'll hit parts of the town and not other parts of the town, right? So, and then tornadoes. There's a tornado alley that runs up I-35 too, so that'll cause a lot of wind damage.
I gotcha.
I was gonna ask because Amy, you brought up the rebranding that you went through. How significant? Because it's pretty unique, right? You went from Feller Roofing to now being Roofer Chicks.
Yes.
So what has that been like? And then to go through that rebranding, the way people knew you and the business
Right.
before to how they identify it now.
Well, I feel like I did it smart as far as it can go, as it was a gradual thing. It wasn't really overnight. So my brother and I owned and his wife owned a company together that we started in 2012 called Feller Roofing and Remodeling. And in 2013, as a joke, when I was on vacation, he had Roofer Chick put in the back window of my truck because we had laughed that would be cool or funny.
Mm-hmm.
And so there it was. So I became known around town as the Roofer Chick, but we were still Feller Roofing. And then in 2016, I split off from him and didn't have a lot of time to put into thinking about what I wanted the name to be. I just needed to go.
Yeah.
So I just became Feller Roofing of New Braunfels because that was easy. I developed the superhero. I call her Lucy, and she just became part of the Feller Roofing branding. And so when I finally did switch to Roofer Chicks, like everybody knew who the Roofer Chick was, and everybody had seen her. The logo changed, but it was scary. I had people who said that it was a stupid thing to do, that I had spent all these years building up this brand of Feller Roofing, and everybody knew who I was, and I had a really good reputation, and people would think that I went bankrupt or something like that when you switch names.
Got
And I had not a lot of naysayers, but I guess I heard them very loud. It's scary to do, but it was something I really felt passionate about. I think it's a much better name, and it's much more unique, and it much more represents me and what we're trying to do. So I'm glad I did it, but it felt like stepping off a cliff at the time.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And like the men on my staff too, that was a thing. They were like, "What? We're going to be what?" So, but
they like it now.
they do, and yeah, they're proud of it.
Good, and it definitely helped the business.
Yes, I definitely helped the business, definitely helped the brand. It makes us stand out. It makes us different. Like all roofing companies out there are somebody's first name or their last name, roofing.
Right.
And then their logo has a little rooftop above it. And that's not all, but
For the most part.
85%, 90%. Yeah. And so, and the pink is definitely different. Yeah.
Have you always been marketing conscious in your business, or not really? Or was that something that you just kind of started doing over time?
I learned most of what I know from my brother. And so doing it with him and watching him and learning what works and doesn't work. And my brother firmly believes in marketing and always has. So when I split off from him, I pretty much just followed his model. Although I would say, I think he, at the time, I don't know about now, but he spent like 8 to 12% on marketing. And cloud roofing used to be big in San Antonio too. And his belief was you need to be everywhere so that when people need a roof, they think of you. But I've certainly grown to love it more and more as time has gone by. And it's interesting to me how it works and what doesn't work. And just some things don't work. You throw something out there and it doesn't work. And throw something else out there.
Spaghetti on the wall.
There you go.
That was not intentional.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. What have you done in the past that didn't work?
I think social media is a great example because sometimes you throw out something and you think it's going to be great and it doesn't work. Like just different videos.
Right.
And sometimes you think you made something really great and nobody watches it. And then just that we were on the way here, I was talking about, we made this pressure washing video back in September and I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden it has like 10,000 views. It's like resurrected from the dead and it's just a pressure washing video. It's interesting.
You never know what it hits. Yeah.
Right. And you can spend like all this time and energy into costumes and lines and everything, and then it's the pressure washing video that goes.
And the thing,
It is.
it's the thing, man.
It's interesting.
Which is why I'm always like, you just gotta, the volume of content is more important than
Right.
the
Just
single
keep
video.
putting things, yes.
Yeah, and you just
definitely.
gotta keep doing
Yep.
it. I love that you do the organic. Do you do any paid?
I have in the past. Right now, I'm not doing any. It like if we had a storm, I probably would to push it out. To me, I'm enjoying watching to see what I can do with the organic and to see what works and doesn't work. Like pictures versus videos versus TikToks. And if you start boosting stuff, then you don't really, to me, you don't have a clear picture of what's doing well and what isn't.
Right.
Because you're paying. Yeah.
That's true.
So.
So you do obviously social media. You got some billboards.
Mm-hmm.
You do some outreach, which is like the Rotary and things like that. Publications.
I feel like I should have written all of it down. Do like have articles, like I was in San Antonio Woman last year, which was fun. The New Braunfels Herald Zeitung, our newspaper.
Did they reach out to you or you reached out to them?
They reach out to me.
Gotcha.
And I have a general rule of thumb that I don't pay to be published. I did that at first. But
Can you pay to be published?
Oh, all the time.
Really? So you can, I don't know about, I don't really know too much about the publication. So you can pay them to like write an article about you?
Yes. So they'll say, hey, we're running this and you too can be part of this for low price of $1,400.
Huh.
Or,
have you done that?
I have in the past and decided
How
to
did they
quit
work?
doing it. It works. It goes out and you're published, but and it gets your name out there, but to me that kind of falls
sometimes
flat.
Doesn't feel authentic.
It doesn't at all. I recently got picked up by an entrepreneur magazine out in California, and it was free, and that was cool. So that's cool when they come to you and they're willing to. The other interesting thing to me is that with articles anymore, it's not really a reporter writing them. They send you a whole list of questions and you answer them. I didn't realize they were going to take that and use it word for word. That's what they do. They just turn around and you use what you write word for word a lot.
Really?
Yeah. So that was interesting because I'm a good writer, thankfully. But the first time that happened, I was just writing kind of casually because I thought they were just getting an idea, and whoop, there it was.
Huh.
Oh.
So what are their, I'm just curious always like how other people are marketing their businesses. So publications you do, but only if they ask you.
Right. I know one thing I don't do TV and I don't do radio at this point in time.
Did you in the past?
I have in the past. I haven't really done paid radio. I have a good friend who's been a big supporter of me that has a real estate show on Saturday mornings, local, and he's asked me to be a guest. And I paid for that once. But other times he's just had me come be a guest. But that's like the extent of my radio. That's really all I've done. I tried a thing through Spectrum a couple of years ago and spent a whole bunch of money, and I was super disappointed by it.
What Spectrum?
Cable.
Okay.
Kind of.
Local cable provider.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't watch a lot of TV, so I'm a little ignorant.
Yeah, no worries.
But the only person who ever, I felt like I paid a lot of money, and I was trying to get on like Fox News because my favorite demographic is older. And then the only person who saw my ad like texted me at 2 a.m. Hey, I just saw you. I'm like, well, that's not where I want to be. I was super disappointed with it. I entered into a contest and I won, and Spectrum came back last year and gave me 3 months of free advertising. And it was phenomenal. It was great. I don't know what the difference was, but it actually ran during prime time and it was really good. That's just a big chunk of change, $5,000 a month. It would up.
It was 5,000?
Yeah, 5,000 a month. It would up my marketing spend. But it was successful. So I've thought about doing that, but I haven't.
So
now they're going to call me. They're going to hear this.
I know, right?
We heard you.
Right. Out of the 5,000, how much business do you think was coming through?
So we track when people call in, we ask where they heard of us from. And I would guess not a lot from that. That was probably more of a branding thing. Like people just hearing your name. But I did get a lot of comments, like a lot of people that heard it. And when people, I get, because our market's small, I mean, New Braunfels is basically 100,000 people. When people do call in and ask us to come out and we ask where they heard of us from, they don't really know.
Right. There's like, we already know you.
Right.
Either billboard or social
Yeah.
media
Yeah.
or the TV or
'Cause
whatever.
we're pretty much like saturated it all. So it gets difficult. to
Any
tell.
any ideas of branching out past New Braunfels?
I've thought about it, which is part of the reason I want to do the name change to Roofer Chicks, because it's more, I can franchise it more easily, or eventually one day I could sell it more
I thought
easily.
it was already. It's not? Roofer Chicks is not
Franchise?
Yeah.
No.
What, but it's a business.
It's trademark.
Right. Yeah, it's trademarked.
It's trademarked.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
But I thought that if I switched the name, it would be easier to like take it to Chicago, or I mean, not Chicago, but whatever. My daughter is almost 15. And so the whole reason I did this in the first place was so that I could be there for her. So if I do any of that, I think it will be like in 5 years when she's out of the house and doing her own thing.
And then
But
you expand out.
maybe. Yeah.
That's kind of fun.
Maybe.
Do you know anything about franchising?
Not a lot.
Yeah, me neither. I'm looking into it. How about you, Jerry? Do you know anything about franchising?
I've done a little bit of research into looking into franchises. You know,
In terms of like buying one?
yeah, you know, because I'm a partner in a real estate investment group, and one of the things we considered was some franchising models in like the restaurant industry. And so we looked at that and went through like some application processes. Also have a very close friend that has 5 brick and mortar buildings within a franchising model. And I always pick her brain and just kind of seeing what their experience has been like. They've been very successful with it, but that's the extent as far as what I've known and kind of ventured to look at.
Because, I mean, at that point, to have a franchise, you'd have to have all of the processes and procedures, documented,
yeah.
put out.
Cookie cutter.
Right. And then
Yeah.
that way it's like
I
easy.
have tried having another location. I ran a location. I'm just shutting it down in Marshalltown, Iowa, which is where I'm from. And that was a stretch. It's hard to manage a business that's in another state and to really understand everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Like you put people in place and you trust them, or you want to trust them. And that's difficult. And we also did, so a lot of roofers storm chase and we don't. But we did, my main sales girl, she's from Louisiana. So when the hurricanes hit, the 2 hit in, I think that was 2020.
It was Ida and
20, yes.
Yeah.
So she went over there. She has a very large family, and she did like 20 roofs. And she did well with it, but it's exhausting. So if I did open up another branch, I think I would choose someplace closer. Like we've looked at Bernie, which is on the west side of San Antonio. Something closer, more manageable. I mean, maybe just plain old San Antonio too, or San Antone.
Yeah, San Antone.
Roofer
Come on,
Chicks
everybody
of
just
San
call it
Antone.
that. Just call it San Antone.
So speaking of that, I know, like Amy, we've talked before, and you mentioned one of your goals is to be the industry leader in terms of like that expert,
Knowledge
right? The
base,
industry
yes.
expert. So, like, what are you actively doing now? I know you said you go to conferences or things like that, and people already are like, "You're the roofer
They
chick."
know who I am.
I've seen
It's
your
crazy.
YouTube videos or things like that.
Right.
So, what does that look like, or what are you planning or have in your mind and thinking like, how can I put Amy
Right?
spin on
well,
this?
YouTube has done a lot of that. I also am an editor for Angie's List, which has been fun. So if you Google my name, that pops up a lot. And so just becoming an industry expert, and I've also written a lot of other articles before I got into Angie's List. They found me because I was editing other articles and writing other articles. In my pea brain in there is to write a book, but I haven't written paragraph 1. But
What would you write about?
I think I could easily write a book about how to deal with customers. Difficult, challenging. Maybe challenging is a better word. But just different skills to use to deal with customers.
Customer
Or
service
how to
book.
run a roofing company. There's a lot of books out there about how to run a roofing company, but to me, they don't really get into the numbers. Like, what percent should I spend on marketing? What percent should I spend on my staff? And what should I be paying in salary? And that kind of stuff.
How much? What's the percentage that you're paying staff?
Well, I'm just figuring that out. I went to a seminar put on by another roofer, Martin. Okay, his last name is long. And he is saying that your producers, your salespeople, superintendent, all that should be 10% of your gross revenue. and then 2% should be like your accounting staff, and 2% should be other office staff. And so, and I've
So
never had
funny.
numbers like that. It's so fascinating to have numbers like that, and
Yeah.
then to break mine down and look at, where are we at?
Yeah,
and,
my mentor told me 37% employees, 25% marketing, 10% operations, and then the rest is for the owner.
Right. So a formula.
Yeah, and so I'm like, all right. So I've been trying to keep those numbers like consistent.
Right. So
And
I
it's been
have
working.
materials and subcontractor labor. So subcontractor or labor in general, whether it's subcontractor or W-2, is 30%. And then materials ideally would be 35%. But a lot of times, especially after COVID, all the material prices have gone through the roof, where they're 45%. But to get my cost of goods sold, I need to be at like 75%. And that leaves the rest for all that. Salaries.
So
and
I'm wondering, Amy, so like, you kind of get people, they ask that question. It's like, you've been doing this for how long now?
by myself since 2016.
Okay.
But
So,
with my brother, probably another 8 years on top of that.
right. So now from like a business or branding perspective, if there was like one thing you could do differently and you go back to that
Right, all
fresh
the way back.
Amy into roofing, be like, like that was really important from a branding or business perspective. Like now, if I could go back and do that then.
Like start as roofer chicks from the beginning would be one thing. I grew too fast, and I think that's what I'd tell people, but I didn't have a choice. I mean, it's not like there's an undo button because my brother and I got sideways and I split off, and I took with me $3 million in business. So I was a startup company with $3 million in business on the books, but no crew, no staff, no. I mean, it sounds like a great problem to have, but it's too fast. But there's no way I could have done it any different. I mean, I couldn't have been like, oh, you keep $2.5 million and I'll just take $500,000. Right. So,
Did you have any, do you have any mentors or have worked with any mentors?
I
Or are
have
currently?
off and on, and currently I'm not. I find as a business owner, sometimes I say I feel like a piece of bread floating in a carp pond. Like everybody wants a chunk. And get approached by all sorts of people who say they can fix this and they can fix that and they can do your SEO and they can do this. They can be your mentor. They can take you to $20 million a year. And if you do that, there's not a % in the budget for that. So to me, that ends up being your profit that ends up going out the door. So you got to have some wisdom in what you do and what you don't do.
Sure.
And mostly anymore, I don't do.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Do people come to you for mentorship?
I get asked a lot of questions. Yes. As far as like one person like that I mentor, at this point, no.
Are you up for doing that?
At some point I will be. I guess if it was right, that's not true. I've got some local people who I was thinking roofers, but I have other small business owners who I do give advice and meet with and talk to. That just have totally different types of businesses, and I enjoy that. I don't think I'd want to do it for pay at this point because I want to get my machine figured out first.
You don't feel like you figured out your machine?
Not 100%, no.
Does it ever get to 100%?
I think it gets closer.
It does, definitely,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But it's like it's constantly learning, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
constantly learning. And I also have the bad habit of I get everything in order and I get everything the way it should be. And then I'm like, ooh, but then we could do this. Like we could start an all-girl crew, right? And I'm not sorry I did it, but it takes money to find those people, train those people, and keep them going. And they're not as efficient all the time, especially as you get them going. So, yeah.
So I guess that's the entrepreneur problem, right?
It is,
It's like,
yeah.
especially visionaries that are always
Right.
like idea.
Yeah.
And how do you stop yourself from pursuing every idea? Do you have like a like sort of a SWOT analysis where you're all like, this idea I have, it's not that great, or it is great, I just need more time. You know what I mean? Like, how do you decide?
I'm mostly trying to tell myself no, but it still happens. Like we started a handyman division this year. And to me, I believe that God puts the right people in the past sometimes, and you need to roll with it when they're there. So we did that. Rebranding was another one that costs money, and like we should do this. And but how do you evaluate? I think you need to do like a cost analysis That would be the responsible thing to do.
Right. To go, okay.
ROI and all that stuff you learned in school.
How long is it going to take to really
to pay off?
get this idea off the ground? How much money? You know,
and some things aren't tangible.
Do I think it's really going to pay off? Or is it not necessarily a payoff, but is it going to be fun to do too? Right. Like, 'cause sometimes I'll embark on an adventure just because it's fun and not necessarily profitable. You know what I mean? I'm like, all right, well, this is going to be a good time. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it's going to
For me, my girl crew is somewhat all of that.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's different.
Yeah. It's fun, different, you know, and then it just, you know, it either fizzles out or maybe it turns into
and that's what feeds the entrepreneur spirit. I mean, that's probably in a sense of what appealed to us and pursuing what we wanted to do is because we could have that creative freedom of saying, right, like, okay, if I want to try something that I think is maybe it's not going to work, okay, at least I don't have anybody else to blame but me.
Yeah, but it's just at what point do you bounce? That is it. It's like, when do you stop? When do you go, you know what? I've done this into the ground.
I've done that with a lot of things. At some point, you're like, I've thrown too much money after that. Like, I tried hiring somebody. I'm mostly residential, like 90 to 95%. I prefer to be like 80%. Anyway, at one point in time, I hired somebody just to do commercial bids and just to do that. And it didn't work. It absolutely didn't work. And it cost me a lot of money.
Why do you think it didn't work?
I needed to hire somebody with more experience in doing it. I took somebody without experience and thought that I could teach them how to do it. And I probably don't know enough myself to do that. And I learned, and I don't know how to overcome this yet. And this isn't his fault or my fault. It's just the way the world is with general contracting. When they're going out there and getting bids from all these subcontractors, they pick the lowest bidder. So if they pick you and you're the lowest bidder, that usually means you made a mistake, right?
Right.
So,
right.
And I think the method to make that successful is that you go in that way and then you change order and you add on the money later. But I struggle with that ethically. To me, if I give you a price and I'm saying it's going to cost this much, then that's what it should cost, unless I run into something I didn't foresee. So maybe I don't have the right personality to play that game. I don't know. Maybe I was working for the wrong general contractors. I don't know. But so anyway, that was one I threw a lot of money after. I lost $100,000 on 2 separate jobs. And I could have backed out and quit, but that's not in me either. I'm like, well, I said I'd do it. I'm going to do it at the detriment to all.
I mean, I'll tell you, this podcast, we did this. I started this a year ago for fun. Wasn't necessarily something that I thought, this is going to be my money-making thing. It was just a fun thing to do. You know what I mean? And it has cost me about $5,000 to $6,000 a month since last year, to like produce properly. You know what I mean? Like with the
I've wondered about that. Like,
it's
what the motivation is behind podcasts.
One, it's fun. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, so we're here, we're talking, we're meeting people, we're exchanging ideas. I learn like a lot, you know what I mean? From it, and it's fun, to do, but it was definitely one of these things that's like, you've got to stay consistent. Once you start the podcast, you just got to keep doing the podcast. You know what I mean? And so it's just like, okay, so I'm not going to say every time it's a great experience. You know what I mean? But it's like, it sometimes can feel like a grind where you have to like, all right, let's do it. You know what I mean? So, but luckily, this was one of those ventures that has paid off in terms of it being fun. It's also, it's also creating content. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But other ideas, not so much. Other ideas, I just kept going and going and going and going, and people are like, "What are you doing? What is this? Like, why are you continuing to do this?" And you're like, I just don't want to quit. You're right. It's like, I just don't want to quit.
I find at some point I literally cannot afford it anymore. Like,
that's probably
I've got
to
stop the bleeding, as painful as it is. I'm sorry, I love you, but
you can see your
go.
runway ending, right? You're like, I've got 2 months left.
Is that what it is? Is it that? Is it the money thing?
A lot of times for me, it is.
It's the money thing.
We've got to stop.
Right.
I can't keep doing this.
Or no time. right? Like
Right.
sometimes it's
Yes.
super time consuming, not
Yes.
necessarily
Yes.
monetarily, but I guess you are monetarily losing if you're spending a lot of time
Yeah.
on that and
Doing
not
something.
necessarily
Mhm.
bringing that money in. So I'm always curious as to how other people, deal with idea overload and, what to chase and what not to chase, and go, you know what? All right, Mondo, you can just put this in the back
Right.
burner somewhere. Not to say that you don't have to do it, just where they can't do that right
And
now.
some of it's having the right people that can like help run it. Like
Right.
if I've got somebody who says, I'll carry that ball, I'm like, great.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
And that's the thing too, right? Yeah, it's delegating and
Mhm.
making sure that, like, okay, how can I get this off of the ground enough to where I can hand this off to somebody
go
and
do
go, hey,
something
these are
else.
my service standards for this particular thing.
Yeah.
And then expand upon it. But it's good to know. How about you? How do you stop yourself?
I feel fortunate that I do have mentors and coaches that I work with. So I've had a business coach for almost 2 years now. I think is very helpful. A lot of that probably comes from some of me just going through trials and errors and recognizing some of my bad habits, patterns, or lack of discipline in certain areas. And I can start to recognize that more in advance of like, I'm kind of heading down the same rabbit trail here with this like I did before. And I think just getting to the root of like, okay, like, why am I choosing to do this or consider this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and, just becoming a more, better discerned business owner. And then part of it is just, I feel like your conviction about certain things. There's certain things that I'm like, I don't know, like the rhyme or reason, or maybe numbers aren't there to support it, but I just have a good feeling about it. So
Right.
I'm going to like follow through on this and just like commit to it.
Yeah, you got to follow the
it's
gut.
just blind faith, right? But
Yeah, and then sometimes people just come into your life and it's like,
Mhm.
oh, well, I can't ignore this. You know what I mean? Like, this
Sure.
is something that, as you came in, you know what I mean? And this just kind of like, things are like kind of falling into place here with Jerry. And I'm like, oh man, today we just kind of figured out that like Jerry's a really good connector,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he's like sort of what publicists do and PR people, you know what I mean? Like they set up
Yeah.
speaking engagements, they set up podcasts, they set up interviews, and I'm like, why don't you do that? Why don't you like PR, as one of your, as one of the services that you offer, if you're connecting people anyway,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? And then just like boom, 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 boom. And so now I'm like, well, all right, cool. Well, if you can help me get some more speaking engagements, and then,
there you go,
then
right?
you're the
Sometimes
guy.
it's just a refining, right? It's a refining of that. And it may be adjusting or tweaking an idea or something that you implemented and say, okay, maybe that wasn't the way or the widget
Right.
or the avenue.
Yeah. And
It
see it
comes
from a
back
different
around.
perspective.
It comes in a
Right now,
different
that's
form.
happening with selling windows. We're talking about it again.
Oh, really? Okay.
Even though it didn't work before. Yeah,
You're going to start selling windows?
maybe. Thinking about it. But then you got to look at back. Why didn't it work the first time? And what are we going to do different? Who's going to run with it? Because it's not going to be me.
Oof. That's just a whole nother thing. But look into that camera and tell them where they can find you.
You can find me at rooferchicks.com. You can call at 830-629-7663.
Amy, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Yes, look her up, Roofer Chicks, right here in New Braunfels.
Yeah.
If you guys are looking for or your roof and maybe some windows, right?
Maybe.
And handyman stuff.
Good job on pronouncing New Braunfels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Well,
nice.
I grew up in Germany.
Okay.
Deutschland. All right. Thank you guys so much. Spaghetti on the Wall brought to you by LaDuke Entertainment for all of your digital marketing and social media needs. And you can watch Spaghetti on the Wall on YouTube, and you can listen to it on anywhere you can find a podcast. Spotify, Apple, Google, you name it, you can find it. And thank you guys so much. We'll see y'all next week.